Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between too. You know, I've been talking a lot of books lately, like a ton about books lately, but today I'm going to do something a little bit different and talk about horror movies. And there's going to be actually a lot of horror movie chat coming up in the next few weeks because July was a really fun slasher horror movie marathon that I participated in with my friend Kat, and it was a flippin' blast. We had a great time, and we actually just recorded some chats today that I'm going to be uploading onto the channel very soon, so I'm really looking forward to you guys seeing that. Plus, I think we may do a very fun live video tomorrow. We don't know for sure if we're going to do live or not, but stay tuned because I'm thinking we will, and it could be a lot of fun. And we'll talk about all the movies we watched and kind of wrap it up. But today I want to talk about two of the movies I watched that Kat did not watch. And those two movies are Psycho II and Stage Fright, which is actually known by many different names for some reason. Stage Fright is definitely known by different names, which I find quite funny. For some reason, I mean, it is like kind of like a foreign film. It's not really it wasn't really made in the USA. So it's also known as Deliria, and it's also known as Aquarius, but most people know it as Stage Fright, and it's from 1987. So we'll be discussing that and Psycho II, which was a sequel to Psycho, yet the interesting and very unique thing about it is the two movies are 23 flippin' years apart. I think that's quite different and very cool, very unique, as I said. Okay, so let's take a look at all the movies I watched before we dive into these two specific movies. And then before we actually get into the specifics of the single movies I'm talking about today, I'll show you some fun kind of show and tell items that have to do with slashers, because so far my summer has been filled with sharks, slashers, and just really fun, horrific stuff. In a good way. That sounds very weird, but it's in a good way for sure. So I'm reading right now the Final Girl support group, so that's slashery right there, and I'm about 142 pages in. This is by Grady Hendrix. It's one of his new books. I just took the dust jacket off. So this has a lot to do with slasher films, because it kind of draws on the films. Of course, this is a book, but it kind of talks about and spoofs some of the stuff from the films, as if they were based on things that actually happened to real life people. Very interesting so far. There's a lot of different opinions on this. So this is something slashery that I'm taking part in recently, besides the marathon I did in July. And there's other slasher type of books I'll be reading in August as well. So I'm continuing on from July into August with slasher stuff. And let's take a look at the movies that I watched in July for this specific marathon. Here we go. Alright, as you guys can see, I watched Intruder, which I also reviewed on this YouTube channel, so you can go back and check out that video. It was also a part of a live stream as this is. And gosh, that one was a surprise to me. I really had a good time with Intruder, and it was the first one I watched to kick off my marathon, and I was actually quite pleased with it. It was corny, but I'm not afraid of corny and campy movies. Sometimes that is honestly right up my alley, so I don't mind that at all. I also watched in July Sleepaway Camp, Deep Red, Alice Sweet Alice, Someone's Watching Me, which I have a lot to say about that movie because it's not really a slasher, but I'll get into that when I talk with Kat. And Kat and I actually watched Alone in the Dark together. That also didn't feel super slasher heavy, but still fun nonetheless. Then, as I said, one of the movies I'm talking about today, Psycho II, and then also, I think on the same night, I actually watched Stage Fright. I'll be talking about both of those tonight. Then Kat and I both watched Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Very unique, fun movie, very meta, very self-referential and stuff like that. Also, we have Hush that Kat and I watched in July, as well as Bloody Birthday, all the Fear Street movies, the 3 movies of the trilogy, and Terrifier, which was very, very scary. And Kat and I had like an hour discussion about Terrifier that I will upload to the YouTube channel soon. We've got Nails joining in the chat. Hey Nails, welcome, welcome. We are live streaming tonight talking about slasher horror movies that I watched in July. And specifically, I'm talking about 2 movies that I watched that my friend Kat did not watch. So there'll be more discussion as the weeks go by into August. Both with me and Kat on Zoom, we had a whole bunch of convos. But today, I'm just talking about these two movies in particular. And before we get into the two movies, I'm going to do a show and tell like I teased. So, let's get into the show and tell! Alright, so, since we're doing a whole slasher theme with this video, I bought some crazy new artwork. We also have Rob joining in the chat. Thank you, Rob, for watching. So thank you to everyone who's watching live right now, but also thank you to all of you who may be watching after the fact, after this is posted, and you go back on demand, I guess you could say, and watch this after the fact. Thank you, no matter how you're viewing this stream right now. So, as you guys can see, this is awesome! This is badass! Alright, so, I don't have it in a frame yet, so this is paining me to hold it up like this without anything. So, it is Chucky from Rugrats and Chucky from Child's Play in the same piece of art. I got it from Etsy, as I said. Oh my god, it blows me away! It's so good! I love it. It's wonderful flippin' artwork. And it wasn't unreasonable either. I have more to show that I might show in my chat with Kat when she's with me in person tomorrow. And let me just, before I show some other things, let me take off this key so you guys can see more of everything that I show. So yes, that was the first piece of art, Chucky and Chucky, which is just freaking badass, as I said. Alright, here's another, and we're going to be talking a lot about Dario Argento tonight, and Dario Argento is the director of Suspiria, and he's got a loose association with the movie Stage Fright, kind of, by association, and we'll get into that, but because I'll be talking about Argento, I thought might as well show my new poster, which is of a Argento movie, Suspiria. As you can see, it's kind of neat, like the color bars, and she's holding up the knife. This is a classic scene from the movie, and yeah, I was very happy to get this, also from Etsy. And this is a different store, though, than the Chucky and Chucky piece. This one was from a store, Chris Butler Designs. So, pretty cool. And since we're talking about slashers, I guess we have to mention the ultimate slasher film, Halloween. One of my very favorite slashers of all time. And as you can see, we've got the pumpkin. And there's the pumpkin up the top going flat. It's kind of like dissolving, rotting. Wonderful! Wonderful. Also, same guy I bought this from, Chris Butler Designs. I kind of went crazy and bought some new stuff on Etsy lately, so I actually have plenty more that I haven't shown that I will be showing in future videos. And here's a poster I've already owned, but it's a movie I haven't watched in a while. I did kind of I watched it last year, so that was kind of recently. But I'm not talking about it today, and I won't be talking about it with Kat. But I do want to mention it because I think it's one of the most underrated slasher type of movies out there, and that is Happy Birthday to Me. It's hard to find a good poster of this movie. As you can see, this reprinted poster, you could tell where there's like scan lines and like fold lines, because it's like a reprint of a folded old poster. The color kind of contrast is very bad. This is just, a very old movie, a very non-really popular movie, and so there's not really good quality posters out there for this movie. However, if you're into slashers and if you're into just horror in general, I do think this is one of the more obscure horror movies that doesn't get talked about enough. There's a mystery to it, there's a twist to it, it's different, it's odd, and it's got some awesome kills, as you might be able to tell from this poster. Yeah, that's a freaking kebab, or whatever you want to call this thing, a skewer. We've got King Need Gore joining us in the chat. I know he likes horror movies. Welcome, welcome. So glad you're with us. And again, today we're talking about slashers, specifically Psycho II and Stage Fright. So that was my little goodies, my little horror goodies that I just showed off. Couldn't help myself. Really excited to get those things from Etsy. They're pretty flippin' awesome. And there's much more to show, as I said, in the future. Alright, so let's start talking about Stage Fright. Alright, let me get to I got my little slideshow, so I have some graphics here. And this movie is from 1987. The tagline of the movie, The Theater of Death. And this was directed by, and I probably will pronounce this wrong, so guys, please excuse me, Michel Soavi. I don't think that's pronounced right at all, but it is spelled S-O-A-V-I, and The movie, as I said earlier in the stream, is also referred to as Deliria and also Aquarius. And as you can see, the poster is kind of like, it looks like a piece of glass being shattered with an axe, people's faces screaming in the glass type of element there. I gotta say, that doesn't really exude the feel of the movie at all. The movie, by the way, this is kind of a spoiler, I guess, to what I think of it. It was freaking awesome. It was incredible. I loved it. It surprised me in every way. And here is the synopsis. A group of stage actors lock themselves in the theater for a rehearsal of their upcoming musical production, unaware that an escaped psychopath has sneaked into the theater with them. And obviously, killing ensues, and it is marvelous. I really had a good time with this. And as I mentioned, why does this connect in any way, shape, or form to Dario Argento? Well, the director that I referenced, who I could not pronounce his last name very well, Michel, worked alongside Argento on a lot of Argento's movies as either an assistant director or a second unit director. So basically, Argento took him under his wing and worked a lot with this guy, and I could feel the similarities between Stage Fright and Argento's work. Specifically, Stage Fright reminds me so much of Suspiria, and that is because Suspiria takes place, it's kind of like at a ballerina, a ballet company, I should say. The main character is a ballerina, so right there you have very theatrical type of feels. This is just in a different way. This is like a play. But the play does have dancing and music and over-the-top costumes, so in that way, it is also very much like Suspiria with the costumes, with the setting. And the setting of the theater is super unique, especially when it comes to kills, and definitely having unique ways to execute kills. And many places to hide. Alright, so that's one way it's similar to Suspiria, but another way is the color scheme. Once you see the color scheme in the movie, I mean, here is a little glimpse of it. Look at her white, pale face, the very red lipstick, the super white hair, which is a wig, by the way. She takes it off very soon after this shot. This is the opening of the movie. This is our main character. And she's a pretty cool main character. I like her a lot. And she has to go through quite a few things. So, unlike Suspiria, what is different about Stage Fright, though, is that, in my opinion, Stage Fright has a way more simple plot. But I don't consider that a negative by any means. In fact, I think it actually is a positive. Now, don't get me wrong. Suspiria is one of my favorite movies of all time, especially horror movies. And so, it's kind of hard for me to say that I like this more than Suspiria, because I've loved Suspiria forever, but I will say when it comes to plot, Suspiria's plot is a little more confusing, and there is this long exposition part where they talk about witches, and basically the main character of Suspiria meets up with this educated guy who's almost like a professor, or yeah, I forgot who he is, but essentially he's very knowledgeable about the history of the ballet school she's at. And so yeah, there's this whole big long explanation in the middle of Suspiria. And also, parts of Suspiria drags on, whereas I feel like Stage Fright, because of its simplicity, is actually quite quick. It moves very fast-paced, and I like that. I think it's a pro in Stage Fright's corner. I like that, and I think it's one of the best parts of the movie. Other things, just the kills were super unique. Now, if I'm kind of keeping with this whole Suspiria comparison, just because of the subject matter being very theatrical, both of them, I feel like this was just as rich in color as I said, but in terms of kills, this one almost had a more, I guess, I wouldn't say diverse, because there's some really unique stuff in Suspiria, but diverse with a similar weapon, I'll say that. And diverse in terms of locations within the theater that it happens. Because Suspiria, a flippin' dog is involved in part of it, whereas Stage Fright, you don't got a dog. But you do have a cat. So there's another similar thing. There is a cat involved at the theater, and the cat is kind of sneaking around. The cat is kind of like not bothered by human blood. Maybe the cat wants to partake in the human blood. So that's kind of very disturbing. And it also reminds me of Suspiria with the whole animal eating people element. And so, just to give you an idea of how many films that this director of Stage Fright, again, his name is Michel, how many films that he worked alongside Argento with, this is some of the list of movies he worked on. So, he was an assistant director for Opera, he was a second unit director for Tenebrae, and he was a first unit assistant director for Phenomena. And also, he was an assistant director for Demons, which Argento helped write. So, all of those Argento was involved in, and so was the director of this movie, Stage Fright, Michel. And unrelated to Argento, other things that Michel has also worked on, he directed The Cemetery Man, which is from 1994. And he was also the second unit director of The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And you might be saying, I've never heard of that movie. Funnily enough, I only put it here because I have heard of the movie. It is a very oddball movie. I haven't watched it in many years. I own it on VHS from back when I was a kid. And spoiler alert, kids really shouldn't watch it. There's nudity in the movie, but I watched it as like a 7 or 8 year old. And I think there's some violence in it too, but it is a very odd film. And I had no idea that the two movies, Stage Fright and The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, were related in any way, shape, or form. Rob brings up a good point, and this is great for you guys who haven't seen it. You can watch Stage Fright for free on Tubi. Also, if you subscribe to Shudder on, your Amazon Prime account, you can get the little Shudder subscription add-on. You could also watch it as part of your Shudder subscription, and it's on there. That's how I watched it. So again, Baron Munchausen and randomly Stage Fright are connected. So that is very, very odd. And Stage Fright is also connected to all these other Argento movies because they've got a director in common, in terms of the director of Stage Fright was the assistant director in many of Argento's films. So that's kind of a neat connection. All right. So also, a kind of newer film, he was also a second unit director of The Brothers Grimm. So this guy who directed Stage Fright did quite a few things. And I gotta say, I think Stage Fright is incredible. It really shines. And if you're a fan of Argento and Suspiria, I gotta say, you have to go and watch this movie. It will be right up your alley. It is cheesy. Suspiria has cheesy parts too. It does have bad dubbing. That is nothing unusual, I should say. It's nothing unusual to movies like Suspiria, and then, like we're talking about tonight, Stage Fright. Bad dubbing. It's an Italian thing. And of course, Michel, the director of Stage Fright, is Italian, just like Argento is Italian. So there's that in common as well. But like I said, I think the thing that makes this stand out above other slashers is the location, the setting. The setting is so different. There's just so many things you can do. Up stairwells, under the stage, rafters. There's this attic area that stuff happens in. There's all kinds of cool props that people can use to murder people. There is a chainsaw at one point. There are knives. There are blades, which is totally very, I guess, what you think of. That's the trope when you think of slasher films, are like that very classic slasher blade that we think of when we think of Michael Myers, let's say. So, yes, I love corniness, I love cheesiness, and Stage Fright had all of that, but I do think when you take away the campiness, it had some cool kills, it has some really artistic shots, which to me, that means a lot to me. If you were with me when I talked about Intruder, another slasher film I watched this year, Intruder also had some very unique shots and very cool camera angles, which I thought set it apart from other movies. Now, it did have campiness and cheesiness, just like this movie did. But again, if a film can do something unique and different, I can forgive the campiness. And in fact, sometimes the campiness is part of the charm and the fun of it all, So it depends on what you like. If you really want something serious and super scary, perhaps you wouldn't like this. But if you do like artistic things, I don't see why you wouldn't like Stage Fright. Here's another good example. I'm going to go back to the slideshow. Here's that classic knife I was talking about that we see in Stage Fright and other classic slasher films, that butcher knife that is just very reminiscent of slashers. And look at that color palette, the blues and the silver gleaming against the camera. Here we've got a bloody face. Again, lots of blood in this movie. I like it a lot. And the blood is very deep, dark red. Rich, rich, rich color scheme. Saturated colors throughout the movie. That's one of the things that appealed to me the most. Here, yes, there is a scene where a woman's playing saxophone and her dress is flowing up like Marilyn Monroe. It happens in the movie, but of course that's part of their little stage production. That's a scene from their play that they're reenacting, is this lady using the saxophone. But yes, very campy, very 80s, the whole movie, not just the play that is being reenacted in the movie, but the movie itself is very 80s. And as we can see, here's a guy in an owl mask. There's that cat I referenced who plays a part in things. There's this one scene that is so theatrical, it's crazy. And it's, this picture is part of that scene. This guy in an owl mask is like dancing around the stage. There's feathers floating and flying. And we've got some really cool angles of this key that's shown on the stage. And I just love everything about this particular scene. If you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll recognize and remember the scene I'm referring to if you go back and watch it after this. Yeah, I gotta give it a really high rating. Like, if I had to rate it star rating, I'd say a 4.5 out of 5. I mean, I liked it so much, I'm almost willing to give it a 5 out of 5. And again, there's this guy with the owl mask. He's kind of up in the rafters there. And there's our main character without the white wig on. I showed you her with the wig. This is her without the white wig. And there is a friendly security guard. And I think that's my last picture. Yep, and again, there's the poster. I cannot recommend it highly enough. You've got to check it out if you haven't seen it. And if you like horror, and if you like slashers, and if you like artistic movies that do things in a very different, cool, and fun way, this is for you. Now let's get to a more conventional type of movie, but still unique in its own way, and that would be Psycho II. As I referenced in the beginning of the stream, what makes it so unique is that, yes, it's a sequel, but it's a sequel that was filmed 23 years after the flippin' original. And it's a sequel that no one thought would probably work. Psycho is one of the most classic horror films ever. It is so iconic. It is really beloved. So when you see advertisements for Psycho 2, back in the day when it was new, you know, people might have been thinking to themselves, why do we need a sequel to one of the greatest movies ever? Leave it alone, don't touch it, don't ruin it. This is going to be a disaster. Lo and behold, I heard it was good. I had never seen it before. This was the first time viewing for me. I've always heard it was decent. I didn't expect it to knock my socks off. It was better than I expected. Honestly, it was one of the best horror movie sequels, or really, I'll even go further and say it was one of the best sequels, period, that I have ever seen. It was that good. My friend Nathaniel Toll, who has written a wonderful book about Halloween movies called Pumpkin Cinema, the best movies for Halloween. Check out the book if you haven't already. Nathan as I call him, because we're friends, he was messaging me on Twitter last night and said, I hear you're going to review Psycho 2. I hope you'll be kind to it because I really love that movie. It's got a special place in my heart. And, you know, he even said the same thing as me, like, you know, who would have thought it would have worked? But flippin', the movie did work and it was fantastic. So he also said the same thing. It just works. It's incredible. And, you know, he mentioned the score specifically. So the score is done by Jerry Goldsmith, who might sound familiar because he's done a lot of scores for other things, including Star Trek scores for Gremlins, The Burbs, a movie I like that's an animated movie called The Secret of Nim. I just wanted to throw that in there because I love that movie, but you guys might not have heard of it. Also, Poltergeist. So Jerry Goldsmith, no stranger to great movie scores. He pulls out another great score here with his score for Psycho 2, which is very morose and sad and creepy at the same time, but effective. So I gotta say, Psycho 2 to me is the standard of sequels. I did not realize how fantastic it would truly be. I am so glad I checked it out. Here, let's look at the movie poster. Here you can see we've got Anthony Perkins reprising his role, which is also unique. So many years after the first movie, he's still around and he's still involved. Another cool tidbit here. The movie Psycho 2 is written by Tom Holland. That name might sound familiar to you if you are a fan of horror, because he also wrote and directed Child's Play. He also wrote and directed Fright Night, which is what Nathan told me when he DM'd me on Twitter last night. I would have probably not looked up the writer. I probably would have just gone over that whole trivia aspect of Tom Holland. I might not have even written it down, but once Nathan told me, oh, you know, the writer of Psycho 2 is the same guy who wrote and directed Fright Night, I was like, what? I didn't realize that. I would have if I actually paid attention to credits and IMDb credits and stuff like that, which I sometimes do, but I didn't in this case. Nathan is the one who brought this to my attention, so thank you, Nathan, if you're watching. I appreciate you. And that was a really cool fact, a little fun fact and connection. Also, Tom Holland also flippin' directed and wrote Thinner, the movie Thinner. So that's kind of a cool connection as well. So I just think this movie has a really great pedigree behind it. When you think of Anthony Perkins, for one, he's reprising his role. Then you've got flippin' Jerry Goldsmith doing the score. Then you've got flippin', I can't speak, Tom Holland writing the film, which would have been hard and very, what would you call it? What's the word? I think it would be intimidating because you've got one of the most respected flippin' movies of all time with Psycho, and then the association, you know, with Alfred Hitchcock, and then, you know, to follow that up, honestly, I think that's a lot of pressure there. So for him to go into that and be like, okay, yeah, I am going to flippin' write a badass sequel that almost rivals the original. It's just, I don't know, really impressive in my opinion. So here we have a shot of Anthony Perkins, of course, as Norman Bates. He's coming back to his house after being released, and I'll give you the synopsis in a second. This is the first time he's seen his house, essentially, in 22 years. The house that brings up so many bad memories of him obviously committing murders, memories just that are not good things to think about. He doesn't want to be back in that mental space. So you can see the tilted perspective of the camera here. We've got a tilted angle, and that's just, it's kind of a sign of his mental state right there. A lot of times filmmakers will tilt the landscape, tilt the perspective of the camera just to show the internal dismay or the internal workings and feelings of the character, and that's what this shot is doing here. So again, Psycho 2, 1983 was the year it was released, and the original was released in 1960. So as I said, 23 years apart. And the synopsis is, after 22 years of psychiatric care, Norman Bates attempts to return to a life of solitude, but the specters of his crimes and his mother continue to haunt him. Dun dun dun. So the ratings, by the way. The ratings here, 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 87% of Google users like this movie. And I'm one of those people because I love this movie. It totally surpassed all of my expectations. Like I said, my expectations were somewhat high, but not like to the moon. So it exceeded everything. I was very pleased with this. So glad I put it on my list. I wish Kat would have watched it with me because I think she would have been blown away just like me. So yeah, as you could see here, part of the movie, he thinks his mother is back as kind of part of the whole thing that's going on. He thinks maybe he's going mad again. He doesn't know what's going on. He finds this note at one point. Norman, get rid of that slut or I'll kill her. Signed, Mother. And he's got this girl who's a friend staying with him. He befriends somebody at work. And so that's a big part of the story. This girl and him figuring out, am I going mad? What's going on? And it's just a very fun examination of the character of Norman Bates. And lots of surprising things happen, so I have not really given away any spoilers. I gotta say, if you haven't seen it, what are you waiting for? Don't wait as long as me, and go and check it out right away. Because just like Stage Fright, I enjoyed this just as much. I would give it a 4.5 out of 5, if not a flippin' 5 out of 5. That's how much I thought it was really well executed, well done, and entertaining. And that is difficult for a sequel to achieve. So I gotta say, maybe I gotta check out more of the other Psycho. I know there's more than just this one. I gotta check them all out. But I don't know if any of the other ones will measure up to this one in terms of a sequel being as good. This one just, it knocked my socks off, like I said in the beginning. So wonderful. Alright guys, those are my thoughts. It's just gonna be a short stream tonight. And I do apologize because if you're joining with me live, it's a Saturday night, a very weird night to stream. I know, it's weird. I was supposed to do this on Thursday, back in last week. I just got too busy. My work week was crazy. I could not fit it in. I was like, there's no way. I need to relax for a second and chill. I just cannot do a live stream after the day I had at that point. So if you're watching this not live, still thank you anyway, even if you're watching it after the fact. Appreciate all of you regardless. Appreciate King Need Gore. Appreciate Nails. Appreciate Rob Extra. Thanks, guys. So that's basically it for me. But like I said, please keep a lookout on the channel. Hit that bell so that you don't miss any of my videos, because I probably will have some cool new stuff coming up on the horizon that has more to do with slasher movies, and I will have tons of new stuff specifically with my friend Kat. So that'll be a fun thing to look forward to. Also, we may be going live tomorrow, as I said, so look out tomorrow. Kat and I will be in person, and we might be going live. So that'll be a lot of fun. I told her I would make the decision tonight. I'm pretty sure we're going to be going live. And like I said, we'll be talking about, here's some of the movies, just to show you one more time. And then she watched some movies that I did not watch, so we'll be talking about those as well. Some of the movies she watched that I did not, that are not pictured here. But here's some stuff to look forward to. Alice Sweet Alice will be discussing. Behind the Mask, which was really very surprisingly good as well. So yeah, lots of stuff to look forward to, but for this time, this is it for me. Have a great rest of the day or night, depending on when you watch this. And till next time, keep on killing it. Bye guys, thank you so much.